All right. So, Stacy, what is something funny or significant or entertaining at the very least that has happened to you in the last 7 days?
That I can publicly talk about? Are we talking about things that I can publicly share right now? Been a
Things that
lot of
can be
entertaining, significant things that have happened in the last 7 days. Justin Carroll, so many. Like, come on.
things that can be disclosed.
Okay, let's go with something significant. I realized in the last year and a half, I worked really, really hard on growing business online, right? And so it was intentional, it was purposeful, but in that, I also realized that there were some rhythms of my family that have fallen short. And I realized in the last couple weeks, as our lives has changed a little bit, that there were things that I wanted to bring back, rhythms and intentionality with my kids. So this Friday, we started family Friday night movie night again, which all the kids were excited about, which involved the movie Migration, which I totally thought of you because there were ducks migrating. And I thought it was a super cute movie. And at the end of it, Benjamin came to me and he was like, "Hey, mom, I really like Friday night movie nights. I'm really glad we're doing this again." So it was just a reminder that the moves that I'm making to establish like new cadences and connection with my kids, especially as they get older, are purposeful and intentional. And so I also went back to things that I used to do um, before I was building, right? And so, especially with Ted being gone for the next 6 weeks, that breakfast for dinner. My kids freaking love breakfast for dinner, and my husband does not love breakfast for dinner. And so we did breakfast for dinner and movie night. And I might have just for one brief moment in time, like Whitney Houston singing at the Olympics, one moment in time, been like the best mom ever in my kids' eyes for just like a tiny amount of time.
I'm sure there's glimpses of that sentiment throughout history. The best mom ever because
Throughout
you
history.
bake. Yeah, throughout history because you bake
Mhm.
delicious treats and make breakfast for dinner and do family movie night. I
Mhm.
mean, come on.
Yeah.
How much better than that can you get? That actually gives me a good idea. Me and Paige are doing a little date night tomorrow night. So, I may just mess around and cook breakfast for dinner and, blow the roof off this bitch. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, the thing that I will share, which was awesome because I did not expect it to. It's one of those like random things that happen while you're not trying to do anything in particular. But Kaysen wanted to go outside the other day when we had Paige's parents and some other company over to eat supper, and so he was like, "Hey, I want to go outside," and he wanted to do this like little bubble gun thing. Well, it comes to find out that the little bubble gun thing is broken. So I went in his closet and realized that there was a toy that he had gotten for Christmas that we had never actually gotten out and used. And it was decent weather outside, so we were able to do it. So it's one of those stomp rockets that you step on the inflatable piece and it shoots the little rocket up in the air as high as as high as you want it to go, as hard as you step on it. So of course when he steps on it, it just kind of goes boop and then back down. He can't get it to go more than maybe 6 or 8 feet up in the air. But an adult steps on it with any type of force and you can send it whatever 50 feet up in the air. I don't know, or higher. So he absolutely was enthralled with it, stayed out there for a solid hour between me. I mean, he really didn't need anybody out there with him. He enjoys other people being able to watch it with him, but it was like me and my father-in-law and a friend of ours just rotating. And yeah, he thought it was amazing. And the moon was out. I mean, it was like kind of afternoon, so you could see the moon, but it wasn't dark yet. And he was like, we can shoot it all the way to the moon. So that's what we did. We
Oh,
shot rockets all the way to the moon.
okay. I don't know what's better than a little kid doing that. Like, that's shooting rockets to the moon. That's everything.
I mean, such a simple little invention that's been around for a long time. And it was a gift from my sister for Christmas. And I sent her a video and was like, somebody likes their rockets. So yeah, we had a good time, and we actually did it again this morning. So there you go.
Ooh, morning rocket launches before school. I'm
Morning
sorry.
rocket launches.
Kaysen's living his best life. Kaysen is 100% living his best life.
I mean, whenever he doesn't have any reason to complain, but that still doesn't stop him from doing it.
I'm aware.
Lord have mercy, kids. What are you gonna do? Anywho, well, as everybody knows, but if you don't know, in case you're new here, this is I Heard You When You Said, a show where everything is made up and the points don't matter. If you've seen Whose Line It Is It Anyway, you'll get that. And the thing we want to talk about today is friendships, because Stacy's been getting a lot of questions about our friendship in particular, and so I'll let her tell you the background of how this came to be.
Yeah, so I actually was talking to one of Justin's clients actually last week. They had reached out to me and was like, "Hey, can we jump on a call?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." And we were talking about friendships, and they were sharing about their friendships, and really kind of where this went to was a friendship that needed a breakup. And I will tell you that friendship breakups are the absolute worst. And I went on my Instagram stories and started to share a little bit about how friendships can be ended beautifully, which might be a really foreign concept to some of you, because raise your hand if you have ever ended a friendship beautifully. It's just Justin and I still can't raise my hand. I've tried to end a friendship beautifully, but I made an attempt. I don't know that it was executed beautifully, but I have definitely tried. I am the person who stays too long and is over loyal and over committed. So getting me to leave a friendship is actually a really challenging thing to do. So as I was talking about this on my stories, DMs started showing up going, "Oh my gosh, Stacy, could you please talk about friendship, especially yours and I's, because it is pretty special and unique." And they're like, "But people don't talk about friendship breakups. Like, they don't talk about it. Will you please?" I'm like, "Okay, well, what do you want me to talk about?" And they gave me a list of things. I'm like, Justin and I are recording a podcast next week. Let me see if he's down for this. And Justin said yes. So here we are. Here we are of where we start. So before we get into Justin and I's story of history, which everybody wants the tea on, pull up a seat. We probably should charge pay-per-view for this. I want to go over what are the signs of a true friend? Because if we're going to talk about how friendships are made, like build it and break it, then you have to understand what real friendship is. And I understand that that's maybe a challenging concept for some people. And this is just based on personal experience, right? Justin and I will tell you, we're not therapists. We don't play one on the internet. We're not doctors. We don't play one on the internet. And so this is our friendship and how we see it. And, got Lightning McQueen and Tomato, and we're gonna make the best of it this morning. Did you have anything?
We'll let everybody decide who's Lightning McQueen and who's Mater.
I don't know. It's kind of true. I make people feel things that they themselves don't understand. I think we both do it differently. We both do it different. Oh my gosh. Okay. So
it's true.
It's true. Is it not true? It's true. We'll save that one for a different day. How we make people feel things differently. Okay.
Correct.
The signs of a true friend. They celebrate your wins, even when they are not winning. True or false, Justin? True or false?
That's true. That's true. They help you. They help you celebrate.
Yeah, even when they're not winning. Most people will celebrate your wins when they're winning too, but a true friend will celebrate your wins even when they're not winning. That's pretty a special gift. They will not tolerate your toxic behaviors, and they will call them out. And that's kind of like a harsh way to say that. I don't mean like call them out as in being rude, but I literally just had a conversation with a friend an hour ago who was catching up on some history, and they were like, "Well, hey, what were your intentions? What was this? What was that?" And we have a close enough friendship that they were able to ask me hard questions, and they had access to do that. That is a true friend. They weren't just going to be like, let me get away with anything. True?
Yeah, I think that, like you said, it maybe is a little bit of a not weird, but like a harsh way to say tolerate your toxic behavior, which I think the word toxic is almost overused nowadays.
100%.
So it's lost some of its potency in that way. What I do think is they basically call you on your bullshit. That's what I say.
I like that.
That's how I like to think about it. It's like they call you on your bullshit. Like, dude, that's not how you really are. Like, that's not what you're about. So, you know, that's not what we do. That's not what we do here. And if it's not something that you want to start doing, then I don't know about it. I don't know about you. That type of thing. So,
Okay, the next one, they keep you accountable to your word. I love that. Like if you said you were going to do something and you don't do it, that they're the friend that's like, hey, I heard you when you said that you were whatever it is, finish the sentence. What's the status of that? Whatever it is. Whatever it is. Okay, we've got, oh gosh, I love this one. They don't just say things, they mean what they say. You want to add to that?
yeah, I think what I'll add, it kind of goes to the last point as well. It's like they hold you accountable and they don't just say things to say things because they're trying to soothe you. I think there are people who say, find people who accept you as you are. And I disagree with that. I disagree with that statement. I think you should find people who can meet you where you are, but they don't accept that. They don't accept that version. They know that there's improvement to be made, right? People who accept you as you are and need nothing and don't want to see, don't have the desire to see you get better are not a friend. They're someone to commiserate with because they don't want to get better either. And so they want to hang around someone who's not going to put pressure on them to get better. That's what that person is. They're not a friend. They're a commiserator. And so the thing that you should be looking for, and I don't should things a lot, but I will in this case, is someone that will challenge you as they are challenging themselves in albeit in maybe different ways than you, but as they are also challenging themselves, right? Someone who will say, "Nah, I think you're better than that. I think you got more than that." Right? I don't think that's all you can do. Let's try that again. Right? That type of thing. And they don't just say that because they're like trying to hype you up. They say that because as much as they want to win themselves, they want to see you gain the steps with them.
Okay, and the last one. And there's more, by the way. This is not of like conclusive list. These were just a few. We could go on and on. Is they use their words to empower you and not dump on you. Like you've had that where somebody just calls and they just want, I don't know if you've had this. I've had this, Justin. But people just call and they are just, you are their wasteland. Like they didn't even ask like how are you? How you doing? Like what's up with you? You are their toxic wasteland for their dumping ground. That's not a good friend. There has to be a duality and balance. Not that there's not days that you're like, "Hey, I need a friend," and they can be a friend, but it's the balance of the relationship. When you see the natural progression is usually them calling or showing up, and it's all about them.
Yeah, I mean, I think people see friendships as like a safe place for you to vent. And while there are spaces for that, I would not say that. I would say that if that's the majority of what's going on, you're probably not friends. Again, you're just commiserators. You just want somebody else to complain with. So be careful. Make sure it's a conversation and not not ventilation, essentially.
Agreed. And I actually not a huge fan of venting. I don't do it very often. So I think like this was rules that not rules, but like traits that I had seen, on the internet and compiled them together. But I wanted to create a baseline of like, hey, if any of these you heard and went, ooh, and somebody came to mind, yeah, pay attention. So we had to know that Jess and I were going to agree on all of these anyway, because we wouldn't be here doing a podcast together, doing business together, and doing life together. But there was a day that wasn't true. There was a day before we were who we are now. And we've stopped counting because after a year, nothing matters, right, Justin? We stopped counting after a year.
Something like that. I wouldn't count in the first place, so
I didn't know that it mattered. Just sometimes people ask how long we've been friends, and so we had to come on an agreement as an answer. So we stopped counting after a year. So without it taking the whole time, how'd this whole thing start?
You became my client. That's how this whole thing started.
That's how this whole thing started.
That's what happened.
That's what happened.
That's the short version, right? We were connected through a old mutual friend of ours, and you became my client, and I was your coach. But that wasn't really how we became friends so much as how we got connected with each other, right?
Yeah, that is definitely not how we became friends.
That's not how we became friends. How we became friends was I was getting ready to transition out of my job as a personal trainer, and I knew Stacy I knew very little about what her expertise was, but I knew that she was someone who could help you do hard things, essentially, something to that effect. So I was like, you know what? Why don't I ask Stacy? Adjust my headphones here. Why don't I ask Stacy if she could help me prepare to go and give my 2 weeks notice, essentially, right? Because I wanted to do it in person in a meeting, not like in an email or anything like that. So I prepared with her by doing a little bit of breath work in my truck before I walked in to have the meeting that would ultimately, me saying, "Hey, I'm out. I'm leaving." So that is, I would say, the beginning of what became more of a friendship and not just a coaching relationship. Although we still have that, but mainly due to the fact that it's kind of like if you want to be friends with your neighbor, go and ask a favor of them, right? Like if you want to meet the neighbor, go and ask them to borrow a cup of sugar or something like that, like that old adage, which I'm not even sure if that would be even relevant anymore in today's society. I'm sure in certain cases, but if you want people to actually be in a relationship with you, ask them a favor, because then you're in their debt, and in a small way, and then from there you can establish a cadence of communication and trust and so on and so forth. So that's how I remember the start of the friendship piece. Is that close to your version?
I think it's the same day, but it backs up a little bit before that, and it's the way that Justin and I use language. Justin calls most people friend. Even if he barely knows you, he'll be like, friend. I don't call anybody a friend unless I've probably committed my life to you in some way. Like, for me to call somebody a friend is like a really big deal. And one day, Justin called me friend, and I was like, I literally said to you, I'm like, we're not friends. Like, you're my coach. And my reasoning for that was, one, I didn't know him that well. Two, my perception of him at the time, which we'll get into later in the episode. But three, there was this coach client dynamic, and having worked as a coach for a really long period of time, there were boundaries that I really wanted to keep. And being friends with your coach usually doesn't turn out that well. For us, we are the exception. We are not the rule. So if you're like, oh, I want to be best friends with my coach, I'm going to be like, no, like this is the exception. This typically does not work out this way. I, other than us, have not seen it work out this way in 9 years of being in the health and fitness industry. It does not look like this. So I pushed back for a while. I was like, that's special. That's gonna be a no. That's sweet. And then that day, I think was the same day that I wasn't feeling good. I had helped him, and we had some pivotal family life news, and my guard was down. It was really close to that week or the next week, and I had shared some really personal information with Justin on accident. Like literally on accident. And I don't share anything on accident. If I'm going to say something, it's with purpose, on purpose. You're rarely going to catch me with my guard down or off guard. I'm not passive aggressive. I'm really blunt and straightforward. So if I'm not telling you something, it's for a reason. And I shared something with him and he's like, I didn't know that. And I'm like, yeah, you didn't know that on purpose. But now we're here. So let's go ahead and talk about it. And at the time, he made this face of like shock. And this is my perception, and we worked it out since then. But he made this face of shock. And it was the face that I had seen everybody else made when they actually got to hear the totality of our story of foster care, adoption, everything we were navigating legally. And so I just thrown him into the same bucket as I had put everybody else in we didn't stay in relationship with because our hard was too hard. And I was like, great, I've lost the one person who has actually helped me get out of my own way in a way that nobody else could. And because I didn't see him as a friend yet, I was like, this sucks. I knew I shouldn't have shared this information. As we went to talk about it more, it wasn't the information that I had shared with him. It was the fact that I was vulnerable with him, which was more surprising than the information at all. And so if I was going to pick a start date, that would kind of be the start date for me. And it kind of just grew from there. Like we became coworkers. We were handed a ton of responsibility together. And I'd say the next really pivotal moment was the day that Justin and I were literally handed, I don't know, 6 jobs together, and our lives were going to be intertwined in a way that we didn't really see. And I was like really worried that we were going to fail. And I will never forget this day. And it's really become an anchor of our friendship that you said to me, like, Stacey, if our intentions are pure, we can't fail. And then I was like, okay, whatever we do, we've got this. And that's kind of how it built. Is there anything you want to add?
No, I think the only thing that I'll add to is because I had forgotten about the conversation that you were vulnerable with me about the court, foster care, all that situation, was that not that I hadn't had people like relay sensitive information to me before, but there was something about, I guess I didn't realize this at the time, probably not because I was too concentrated on like navigating, like being a coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it wasn't like you were complaining about it, which was 99% of the time I had heard someone confide something that their struggle was that they were saying, because of this, now this. Like it was almost like because of this hard situation that I was put into or found myself in or chose to be in, whatever the circumstance was, that is the reason that I'm here. And I don't think I heard that. I think it was more of like, and probably what caught me off guard the most was like, oh, this is pertinent to the situation, but she totally didn't have to say anything about this. And it still would have been like, we still would have had a perfectly effective and useful coaching relationship. But for whatever reason, like you said, feeling vulnerable that particular day, almost by accident, it was, oh, well, that definitely changes the way that I see you as a client. Because like you said, it wasn't really like a friendship at that point. And so I took that and, as you like to say, put it in my pocket so that
Did put it in your pocket. You so freaking put that in your pocket.
So that I didn't forget what I needed to remember.
I said that's kind of where it started. And then it was Justin and I remember this so clearly. As our friendship grew, there was we kind of came into this conflict, and this is where I want to get to the place of friendships breaking up, because our friendship was built over time with trust. It didn't happen overnight. And there was like this ebb of flow and trust. And it doesn't happen now, but it did happen then. I like to say that Justin would and I would play like emotional chess with each other. Like who was willing to give this and who was willing to get and who put what in whose pocket. And it was the beginning of I heard you when you said, and all these things of new friendships are so challenging because I just want a new friend to be an old friend. Because it's like so learning someone and knowing like, can you be vulnerable? Are they going to like all your ugly parts? Are they like all the things you try to shield from people? And there's no way to rush that process. And at the same time, I will tell you that I have endured more conflict with Justin Carroll in the duration of our friendship that was serious, like emotionally charged, not with each other, but just in what life handed us in the course of our friendship than I have with any other friend in the entirety of having friendship. And that fire really forged us together in a way I don't think that either one of us could have expected. And that each time we navigated this, I don't even have a word for it. Please help me with a word. Like,
Messiness. That's
oh
essentially what
God,
it is. Messiness.
such messiness. Time after time, personally, professionally, like whatever it was, we came out on the other side with more trust and confidence in each other. And so then it allowed us to be like a little bit more transparent, a little bit me like, hey, like this isn't just a little thing, but we're kind of in this. But then there was a situation that happened in early 2023 where we were navigating some messiness outside of us. And I was forced, Justin had called me with really another opportunity to help him in a way that I had never seen him. And it was probably the next defining moment in our friendship because what I thought was going to be a 30-minute conversation was an hour and a half of deep, important accountability, camaraderie, just no holds barred conversation between the two of us. And we're not going to go into what that conversation was about because that's neither here nor there and it doesn't really matter. But after I got off the phone with him on that conversation of how I had kind of coached him to navigate the situation, I had some questions of what did it mean about our friendship. And so this is the point that matters. And I'm going to talk to people about when you know who you are and what you want. That is the important part of building any friendship that has longevity, right? And there was things that Justin had shared and that I had shared in our conversation previously that really made me question if we just had a coach client relationship, if we were just work friends, or if we were like life friends, if our families were friends. And I will tell you that is still to this date the hardest adult conversation in a friendship outside of my marriage that I have ever had. I don't think I was breathing that day. That was horrible. What do you have up until that point?
So yeah, it was that particular conversation. So since we're, on that one conversation is when I called you to confide, may not be the right word, but to seek guidance, seek counsel. Mm-hmm. Because I knew, well, number one, because you were involved in it, but also number two, because I knew that you would have more clear eyes on the situation than I would, because it had to do with something that I hadn't really done a whole lot before, and that was forming boundaries around friendships, right? And so when we got into the conversation, like you said, I walked away. Well, this is the difference, right? I walked away with relief, knowing that it was going to be hard work moving forward, but with relief because there was some sense of a direction. And you walked away with more questions going, okay, well, if this is the situation, the conversation we just had, what does it actually mean for us as friends, right? In terms of boundaries and things like that. So then that led to, that conversation led to the next conversation, which was, for context for everybody listening, the first conversation was not necessarily about us two. It was about me and another friend, and Stacy was the kind of third party offering the guidance a little bit, right? The next conversation between Stacy and I was about Stacy and I, right? And is that do you want to give some context to that next, the hardest conversation we've ever had as adult friends?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Because that was, I don't have a better word. When we're talking about adult friendship breakups, like this was going to be the test. There were really specific, pointed questions that I had asked Justin. And if he had answered them any differently, I was willing to walk away from the table completely. Like that he could have possibly just been my coach and maybe not even my coach because our families were involved at that point. Like he had developed a relationship with my kids and a relationship with my husband, and Paige and I were getting to know each other a little bit. And so for me, knowing that like I just have a little bit more life experience than him just due to age, that there were things that I wasn't going to allow to happen, like relationally, as in like who has access to me, if we didn't see each other the same way. And so it was that hard question of like, hey, this is how I see you. I see you as like family. We are friends that are family, you're not just my coach. You're not just my coworker. This is how I see you. And like me waiting for his answer was just like, okay, I'm willing to walk away from this completely if it wasn't the same. Now, not to ruin the story, because we're both here right now. His answer was the same, but it took us a little bit to like catch our breath after that and then kind of build from there. Again, it was the next big pivotal thing in the trajectory of our friendship.
Yeah, this is a point where an inflection point, it was both an inflection point at the time and an inflection point in this conversation where I want to point out to people, this is where typically most people either don't are afraid to have broach the subject of this conversation, like what are we, right? It's usually a conversation that happens between couples, but it's really needs to be more of a conversation that happens between friends that have established, like kind of crossed a little bit of a barrier from one relationship to the next, as far as like coaching relationship to an actual friendship, or whatever, business relationship to friendship, or whatever, however you want to put that. But this is where most people kind of unite against a common enemy, in my experience. Is like they're like, well, we're friends because we're united against a common enemy, or we're friends because we happen to reside in the same general atmosphere together, whether it's a physical location or an industry or whatever. But they never actually asked the question, like, are we just friends because we work together? Are we just friends because you've hired me or I've hired you? Or outside of the context of this particular setup, would we still be friends? That type of thing. And so that was the guiding question that was asked of me by Stacy. Obviously it was a vice versa scenario. And like she said, spoiler alert, we started business and podcast together. But it was something where I had never had that question asked of me. And I knew the answer. I knew my answer after not too much thinking. I didn't have to like rack my brain about it. But it was also one where I had to start redefining other friendships to go like, that's actually a really good question. Would I still be friends with this person if we had no like common work placement or whatever, right? So that being said, I was like, oh, that's a great thing to think about going forward with all new and existing relationships, is like, in what box does this fit in, and how much time does needs to be invested in it?
Yeah. And so to give people context, if a friendship, it can't be one-sided. Invest in the people who are investing in you. And if that's like the duality of like the things I think we do really well with each other, is that not only do we invest in each other, but we invest in each other's families. And so I think that's a piece that, because I'm just going to call it out really early because it's something that I got a lot of questions about in the summer, the difference, the dynamics between, yeah, there's 20 years between us. Justin's male and I'm female, just in case you're not watching this and didn't know. Okay. Like we are fully aware. And so, not now, it doesn't happen. I haven't heard it in a while, but there was a time before this time that it was like people couldn't accept that a male and female could be friends on the level that we are without it being sexual or romantic. So it's not, but we also have our families involved. And it's something that we've shared personally when people like are in front of us and go like, okay, so what are the boundaries of your friendship? And so we came up with 2 rules. Uh they're a little bit crass. I will be as gentle as I can, even though that Justin put a language warning on this podcast. Rule number 1 for those of you who are seriously concerned that there's anything more to this friendship is we only sleep with our own spouses. So, rule number 1 in a friendship, if you're going to model your friendship after ours, you don't have sex with anybody other than your spouse. Now, if you have a different lifestyle, good for you. Okay. I'm not judging you. You live your best life. But for us, you only have sex with your own spouse. Rule number 1. Rule number 2, because we watched other people step in puddles that we weren't going to step at. Friends don't suck, fondle, touch other people's body parts. That's just a thing that friends don't do. So we don't have any more rules than that. Then I don't. Do we have any more rules?
Those are the 2 guiding principles of rules.
Guiding principles.
Guiding principles. They're the pillars, if you will.
The pillars, if you will.
Something that you made in the notes here is that we also don't use each other's weaknesses against each other. That is more, I mean, yes, that's foundational, but I think that's more of a good practice in a friendship, right? The other 2 are pretty much need to have. This one is right up there with it, but I think a lot of people would actually use this more as a nice to have. But again, like I said, what's the definition of that friendship for you? Because it could be not really a friendship; it could just be someone that you enjoy. Enjoy. I don't know. You enjoy making fun of each other. Maybe that's the context in which some people are friends. I don't know that for sure, but I can tell you that what we've agreed on is if you're going to use whatever I have done or what has happened to me to leverage me to seeing your point of view or to doing something, then I don't, that's uncalled for, basically.
I think that is like I brought up the first 2 because I've never addressed it publicly, and people ask me things that they would never ask Justin and show up in my DMs. And I'm like, okay, let's just set the record abundantly straight that you actually can do this. But I will say we are the exception, not the rule. It takes a lot of work to actually do this. It doesn't feel like work all the time, but if you really, and it's not for everybody to know all the work that we put in to our friendship. If you're like, hey, these are friendship goals, it didn't come on accident. Like it came from curating our relationship with each other and our families. And I think that's the piece that is really the cornerstone that, yeah, it's cool that we get to be friends, but this wouldn't work at the level that it does if our families weren't friends. That like we do things as families, and Paige, I literally talk to Paige more than I talk to Justin. Maybe not now, because I mean, we do business together and we talk together all day, but Justin and I talk on professional level, but Paige and I talk as friends literally almost every day. And so this relationship wouldn't have the strength, or I do think the support that it did, if that wasn't the case, for people watching on the outside going like, legitimately, like, how do you guys do this?
Yeah. And truthfully, we don't like talk on the weekends. Right. I mean, outside of work hours, quote unquote, unless it's like, hey, saw this cool thing, thought you might like it, or, sending each other, dumb Instagram memes because our algorithms are aligned, I guess you would say. Other than that, the communication mostly is this like almost like a juggling of like, hey, as a friend, saw this, as a business partner, this is what we need to address, that type of thing. And so it really weaves together more than it's like sectioned off.
Yeah. Except when we are in work mode and I'm like, we can't be friends today. We're going to have to be friends later.
Yeah, we're not friends. We're not friends right now. We'll be friends later.
We've definitely had that conversation when there's a lot to do. We can't be friends right now. We're going to have to pause being friends until we have time to be friends later.
Sure.
Well, we're not going to get to the thing that I wanted to do the most, but I have a list of questions for Justin and I that we were going to answer for each other, and we will definitely do a part 2. We have time to answer 1 or 2 of these questions, and then we'll follow it up on a second episode of how to know when to leave a friend.
So what do you want to do? The questions and then do the friend breakup part on a second episode?
Yeah, let's do 2 questions from our lists because we'll probably have time for 2, and then we'll follow up on another episode with the rest of the questions and how to know when to leave a friendship and break it up. So
Sure.
you pick the whole list that you can see. You have carte blanche and all the power to ask a question. We're going to ask each other, but you go first.
What was your first impression of me and how has it changed over time?
Oh my gosh. Are you serious? That's the one you're starting with?
That's the one I'm starting with because I had to go with the most entertaining one.
Hey, let me just say this is not my current impression of Justin Carroll. I did not get to choose Justin as my coach. And if I would have gotten to choose anybody as my coach, I wouldn't have chosen him just based on what I saw of him on social media. And so all I saw you as was this pretty CrossFitter with an accent, this 28-year-old at the time who didn't know anything. And if you guys want to really know how Justin and I's first conversation started was, hi, I'm your coach, blah, blah, blah. And I spent, I don't know, maybe the majority of our time together telling him how I was going to let him coach me. So just completely judging him solely on his aesthetic. I didn't really give him a shot or time of day. And that he did then win me over by how much he actually knew. His knowledge and expertise in this industry is really unmatched, which is why we do this together. Like there really isn't any other person that I would trust or pick to run alongside of and building something really amazing together than you, because not just what you know, but the heart behind helping people and how you get people results in every way. That's how it's definitely changed. So you went from just like, I don't know, this young guy on Instagram who always had his shirt off that I fully did not freaking understand, to one of my favorite people, the most brilliant minds with the heart to help the most people. That's how it's changed.
Wow. Well, guess we could just wrap the episode up there. Shit. For everybody who's not watching or doesn't follow me on Instagram, I'm still just the dumb CrossFit shirtless guy. I just have a kid now, and that's about the extent of the situation. Although I will say now that I've gotten into jiu-jitsu, it has a lot less to do with taking your shirt off at CrossFit and more rolling around with sweaty dudes in pajamas. And as far as athletic potential goes. So as you can imagine, with Stacy being from California, and obviously not having an accent and being very, kind of straight down the lane a little bit until I got to know her a little bit more. My first impression of her was basically as California as it gets. She had purple hair at the time when I met her. She worked in a coffee shop or a bakery / coffee shop making baked goods that were like gluten-free, non-GMO, naturally raised, humanely treated, calorie-free, all those type of things. As many labels as you can put on a product, that's probably how she made it. And so I was like, this is going to be interesting. I'm not exactly, in that bias in that direction, but it is what it is. Everybody's got their flavors, and that's how they like to do things. So, this is redneck me, which thank God at this time, I don't think, again, it truly is thank God, because no other time in my life would we have been able to meet and it made sense. But at this time, I had been exposed to so many different people in the personal training industry that my mind was open to how people actually operate in their life, but that we're all really the same. Like, we all really have the same wants and desires, and uh, interest at the end of the day. So that was my initial impression. And over time, and Stacy was like she said, the first conversation was, this is how I'm going to let you coach me. This is what you're going to be allowed to do. And it's funny that she remembers that she recalls that, because I don't even, like, I do kind of recall that, but I don't really remember it striking me as like, this bitch has got some nerve. Like, I never really had that thought necessarily, but I did have the thought of, this is going to be an interesting one, because I see the potential and I see the need. But until the vulnerable conversation about, family and foster and court and all that, I didn't really understand what needed to be done until that conversation. I was like, okay, I see. She comes across as, rough and tough, but there are things in the background that need to be addressed and seen and maybe discussed, so that they can be so that she can move with them and through them. So over time, it's come to be, hey, not only is Stacy a great mom, because I got to know her family and was like, and now gone on like a vacation with her family. I'm like, holy shit. What problem did what did you do in a former life to deserve this? But not only is she a great mom, but she's a great teacher and communicator of people, and she takes relationships to the next level, with a seriousness that is pretty much I've never seen, which is, again, why this is an exception, not the rule, is that because the seriousness of calling people a friend is not something that she takes lightly.
Well, thank you.
And if you haven't figured it out by now, neither me nor Stacy are very good at taking compliments, giving compliments to each other, or taking them. So
Oh my gosh.
if you watch this later and you're like, why are both their faces look like someone just smacked them over the face? That's why.
Yeah, we don't do this very often. It's usually, if we're going to have this conversation, it's usually in a car and we're driving somewhere where we're both locked in and can't get out.
Yeah, it's like that conversation that you don't want to have with a parent, and they're like, or the parent doesn't want to have with the kid, but they're like, well, they can't go anywhere now, so might as well break it open here.
So we will pick up this conversation next week, because there are more questions and we want to be able to finish this conversation. So if you have stuff in between now and when we record the next one that you want to know, let us know. You can DM me, Stacy, at Stacy J Hansen on Instagram. He's at Farmer TO Fitter. And we're here for it, and we'll be back next time.
Hell yeah, we will. See y'all soon.